Hey everyone, welcome to the Acrobatic Arts podcast. I'm Loren, and I will be interviewing some of the top leaders and innovators from the dance and acrobatic industry. If you are a teacher, performer, student, or a lifelong learner like myself, you are sure to find these episodes intriguing and full of inspiration. Acrobatic Arts is passionate about providing current and relevant information for everyone. So please, sit back and enjoy as we share our passion with you and the world. We have a very special episode today featuring an incredibly talented performing artist. We are truly honored to have Derek Piquette with us. Derek has achieved many professional and artistic goals. He is especially focused on working with dancers around the world, hoping to pass on his enthusiasm for dance and inspire them to become the best they can be. Let's get right to it and welcome the star of today's show, Derek Piquette. Welcome, Derek. We are so excited to have you here with us on the Acrobatic Arts podcast.
Thank you for having me. Hello, hello.
I am sure that many of our listeners know who you are, but as a refresher for them and for an intro to those who don't, can you please share a little bit about your background, your journey into the world of dance, and some of your highlights of your career?
Yeah, totally. I started dancing when I was like 8 or 9 years old in Massachusetts. And then from there, I moved to Miami for a brief stint for my last few years of high school. And then from there, I went on to So You Think You Can Dance, and I was on season 12. Um, just at 18 years old, kind of broke into the scene of, professional dance, and then went on tour with them. And then just one thing kind of led to another while I was still training. And, I was living in Toronto at this point, and I auditioned for Cirque du Soleil and ended up a year later booking Kuza as the lead character and toured with them for 2 years. Like I said, it just kind of was like a ripple effect and was able to do a lot in TV and film in Canada specifically, as well as the US. Competed on season 3 of World of Dance, continued my training through all of that to get as much knowledge as possible from each of those jobs and each of those experiences, as well as training, to become a better teacher. I've been teaching for the past 10 years now, alongside with all the professional work. And yeah, I've taught, I think 12 to 15 different countries now, all over the US and Canada. It's been a pretty wild 10 years.
Derek, you definitely have some amazing highlights. And I remember watching you on So You Think You Can Dance, and you are definitely an acro dance superstar.
Oh, thank you.
Reflecting on your early years as a dancer, where does acro come into play and how has it contributed to your development and success as a dancer, choreographer, and innovator?
Honestly, growing up, acro was like by far my favorite thing. You couldn't get me to stop flipping around. And if you ask my parents that, like they are a true testament to that. I self-taught myself a lot of it, and that is, where so much had to be changed and worked on after, which was kind of like a double-edged sword because I didn't have that fear, so I was able to watch YouTube tutorials and stuff like that. But then my technique was just so incorrect that, when I got into the studio or with a training teacher or coach, it was like rebuilding. So it definitely was,
Yeah.
like I said, there's pros and cons of that, a lot of cons. So make sure to kids out there, really wait for your teachers. But I was just so obsessed with it. And like I said, I wouldn't stop. I'd go in my backyard for hours and hours and hours every day in the summer and just tumble and try new things and try and at my age thought I was inventing new things and it was uh it was a lot of fun. I remember having so much fun literally just by myself and using acro as like an outlet. I also would watch videos on YouTube for hours on end if it was like raining outside. I think I like broke down, and watched things in slow motion, and that is kind of how I would teach myself. I realized that I found myself like doing the same thing as a teacher now, of like now with all the knowledge of, everything I've learned from my teachers, from acrobatic arts, from everyone together. It's like I now break down these like really hard skills and can kind of create progressions for them or see something wrong. And I think that comes from a skill of literally watching YouTube videos for hours as a kid, and breaking down that in the first place.
Definitely. I can see how that would help you as a teacher now. And it's fantastic that you recognize that. Was there any moment or time in your experiences where you realized that you had hit a level in your career that you had always dreamed of?
Yeah. Yes. It's pretty insane. Like when I was growing up, I had two goals. One goal was to be on So You Think You Can Dance. I only really started getting serious into dance because of the show. I saw it and I was like, wow, I want to be on that show. I want to be like them. I want to be like all those incredible male dancers. So at 18, I auditioned and, it had a really successful run on the show. And the only other goal at that point that I had was when I was like 13 or 14, I saw my first Cirque show and I saw Stare in Vegas with my mom. And I remember leaving the auditorium and telling my mom like very specifically, and like I said, she'll tell you the same thing. I said I want to be the lead in a Cirque du Soleil show one day. And at 19 years old, that came true. Which again was one of the wildest things. And I'm so lucky and so blessed to like, have those cards dealt in my favor and worked my butt off to get there. But very specifically trained, I kept up with intense acro training and dance and ballet and staying versatile. And so I had my mind set on those two like major goals and trained very specifically for those goals. And yeah, by 19, I kind of hit both of those. Well, I did. And it kind of after that was like, okay, well, what's next? And that opened up my mind to like a world more of possibilities because I didn't want to get stuck. I wanted to keep training. I wanted to keep learning. And I, I'm so lucky to have achieved both those things at such a young age that it just like I said, opened up a world of possibilities.
So many of us have dancers that aspire to reach the level that you have. Are there essential lessons you've learned that you wish someone had imparted to you when you were first starting out?
Yes. I think first and foremost, like always stay true to yourself, in an industry that can, want to change you, or that can change you. That being said, safe training needs to be a priority. And that's not something I did grow up with, in a sense of, overstretching, overuse. I've already had two hip surgeries. I need two more. And it's like, I wish someone had told me that like there is a safe way to do this. And now, working so heavily with acrobatic arts and all the training and knowledge I've gained from them, there's like very clearly proof that there is a safe way to do this. So I just wish that was, a little bit more influence growing up. And then just, I think what I was saying with acro in the first place is, or what I was saying like when I was younger, that I was obsessed with it. If you're not obsessed with this art form, or if you're not obsessed with, I say to my students all the time, if you want to be good at turning, you have to become obsessed with it. And a healthy obsession, you don't want to obviously go overboard, but it's like you have to love this art form so much that you can be told no every day and still get up and go to class or still get up and go to the next audition. Because even, someone like you were saying, people aspire to be, have the accolades that or the career stuff that I have. It's like I still get told no every single day. I still get told, you know, either not good enough or not right for this role or whatever the case may be, on a daily when I'm auditioning. So it's just if you don't love it, if you don't love it, if you're not obsessed with it, it's going to be a really hard journey. So find that love for it and keep finding it because there's been times that I've absolutely like not been obsessed with it, right? And there's been times where I find myself in a pattern. It's like you have to, there's so many avenues in this industry too that I think people forget about. Like, if I'm feeling like I need to be re-inspired, like I'll go judge a dance competition because I can just sit there, I can give my critiques and give my good feedback, but I also am being like re-inspired by hearing new music and hearing and seeing what, the younger generations are doing nowadays. And it's just like finding ways to be re-inspired continuously and in the industry as well.
Fantastic advice for everyone trying to achieve higher standards. And I'm glad you mentioned judging a dance competition. Are there things that you can see from your point of view now that you think young dancers miss along the way that could really make a big difference in their career?
Yeah, I think this is something I dealt with growing up too, of just like performing from a real place and using like real emotion. I think that is a huge thing missing right now. It's like finding real emotion in your dancing and not this kind of portrayed facial expression you put on. And I always try to explain when I'm teaching class that, you need to get your mindset in the right place of whether you know about the song or the story or whatever your story you're trying to portray, whether you've gone through it or not. We've all been sad, we've all been happy, we've all felt these emotions. So how can you take that and apply that in the dancing, like in the moment, and so that you have that real natural feeling coming out? And that's not something I learned until I worked with Cirque. Like I even like kind of peeked through when I was doing So You Think You Dance, but it wasn't until, I did Cirque that I was like really could bring myself to that mental state of kind of closing out the room I'm actually in or the stage I'm on and bringing myself to a whole other world. I think that's a huge thing missing on top of just like pure technique. Like I feel like we're in a generation of how quick can we get a trick or how high can we get our leg up but the hip is up or we're not, rotating from the right place or our supporting leg is turned in or there's so many different things in technique, not only technique, but acro technique that I just want to see more knowledge, I think, behind the technique, or more awareness of technique in the dancing. Because obviously, you get on stage and adrenaline kicks in, and you do let go of some things, but that's where your training in the studio comes, so that it becomes second nature, and that you don't have to think about rotating from the certain place. That like it just happens, right? And I just think there's like a little bit of lost in translation there right now. And it's like, or it's you really have technique and you have very little performance, or you have so much performance and very little technique. And just I think just getting that all together again and just, finding that true balance is really going to help the younger generation.
You mentioned that you already had two hip surgeries and you need two more. I'm curious to know how these significant setbacks or injuries have affected your dance career.
Yeah, it was came at a really weird time. I had just competed on World of Dance and in that process right before I finished with Cirque or I was finishing with Cirque and I had started to feel like I've always had pain in my hips, but I think being on a schedule with, 10 to 12 shows a week with Cirque, tumbling and doing acro and nonstop, just craziness on stage, it put even more, like it took my already existing like hip pain kind of to the next level. So I spoke to people like all around the world because I was touring at the time. I spoke to like the top doctors and surgeons and whatnot, and everyone wanted to replace my hips. And there was one surgeon that wanted to restore. So I ended up going with him. He was incredible. I could not, praise this surgeon high enough. He gave me my career back, which is so incredible. And it was a long year. Like it was about a year and a half. Luckily, unluckily, obviously, we had the pandemic and I was recovering from my second surgery pretty much right when like the heaviness of the pandemic hit. I had all that time to recover, which, like I said, for me was a blessing because I know if there wasn't a pandemic and everyone wasn't on halt and there was jobs still happening, I probably would have rushed my recovery or jumped into it too soon just to get back into it. And the fact that no one was working and everything was on pause was probably the best thing for my recovery because it gave me the actual time that I needed to recover properly. And it was supposed to be for my second surgery, it was supposed to be an 18-month recovery. And because of my physio team and the work that we put in and my surgeon, we cut it from 18 months to 6 months where I was medically cleared. So it was pretty insane. So it's like it just goes to show if you like put in the work and you listen to your doctors and you're doing everything that they're telling you to do, it really can heal the way it's supposed to and properly, and you can get back to doing what you're doing rather than like saying I was rushing it at 4 months, started jumping again, and would have kind of ruined the whole progress, right? So it was a huge setback, but like I said, luckily I had the pandemic to recover. And then I was super lucky to work on the first television show back during the pandemic. I was working in Vancouver on a TV show called Schmigadoon on Apple Plus, which also was a very life-changing experience coming back from hip surgery. Like I didn't know what my future held, which was super scary, but it was amount of pain that like I couldn't sleep at night. I couldn't walk. I could dance because I had adrenaline and it being in like hyperextension was actually like the more comfortable option. Whereas like sitting parallel, like I would be cramping. I would literally I couldn't do it. So it definitely was something that needed to happen. And that just came from, unsafe training, overuse, overstretching, during my training when I was in Miami.
During your time when you were recovering, was there ever a moment when you thought that you might not make it back to dance?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There were some, heavy dark days where like, especially because, like I said, we were in the middle of the pandemic, so that also, you know, was impeding on it. But there was definitely huge setbacks. Like I had to relearn how to walk. Like I had to relearn how to do everything. So it was really scary. I think one of the hardest things was like I've worked my whole life to be as like strong as I can and to, jump as high as I can or to tumble as high as I can. And, that all comes from strength. And to be kind of set back at zero and my left leg was completely in a sense like zero muscle. Like I lost so much muscle mass in my left leg that it it was someone who's strived to be so strong their entire life being so weak was very tough mentally to deal with. And with time and with patience and therapy and an incredible physio team and support team, like I was able to, gain it back and get back to a place where I felt really comfortable again. But yeah, there was definitely a lot of hardship there.
Did those experiences change your perspective or approach to dance?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I very training I trained very turned out growing up and very ballet heavy, whereas now I train very parallel jazz heavy, just as like a performer myself, just because I know what's required of me in the industry and the things I would or wouldn't audition for. But also as a teacher, like finding that balance of being turned out sometimes and then also other times being parallel and finding that balance because it's like cross training in a sense. Like it's you can't just do one and then just like form and placement as a teacher, especially as an acro teacher, I get really meticulous about, proper form just because I don't want my students and these kids to go through what I had to go through.
With all of your accomplishments, how do you continue to challenge yourself now, and what is your biggest focus?
I think this past year I have taken a big step back from performing. I like made a conscious choice to not take any long contracts this year. Um, and just focus on choreographing and teaching, choreographing specifically in TV and film, and trying to do as many passion projects as I can to, get as much work and exposure out there doing concept videos. I was lucky enough to be a co-choreographer on a music video recently in LA for Grant Kanoki. And it's just projects like that like are really fueling me. And yeah, I'm excited for, long term, I want to direct and produce and choreograph in TV and film. So it's just like building my way to that slowly and, taking the proper steps and getting my work out there has just been what's kind of fueling me.
And do you have anything else on the horizon?
Yeah, I just started Prodigy Dance Convention. It is a dance convention not solely, but it's a dance convention that is geared towards dancers that want to be in a dance team in university. It's bridging that gap between the convention and competitive world that I work in, and the university dance team world that a lot of my friends and teachers that are working for the convention work in. And I think, I used to ask my students a lot, like, okay, like who wants to be a professional dancer or who wants to have something to do with dance one day? And, there'd always be like a few hands. Whereas nowadays, what I've been finding is that anytime I've like asked that question, almost every kid is like, I want to be on a dance team. So I saw that shift in our culture, but then there also is like so many of my students that are like, I want to do that, but I don't know how. So what Prodigy Dance Convention is, like I said, bridging that gap and giving these students the information that they need to get to that level of dance team because it is a very different world. So as well as a convention, it's a recruiting event. We have 20 of some of the top universities in the country attending and recruiting for their teams. And like I said, handing out information, talking to the dancers about what it takes to be on the dance team, what your GPA has to be on a dance team, because there's a lot of miscommunication and a lot of missed information right now that kids just don't have. So that's where kind of Prodigy comes from.
Wow, that is super exciting.
Thank
And
you.
tell everyone how they can find out more about it.
Yeah, so you could visit us at our website at prodigydanceconvention.com. The first event is in Nashville, October 12th and 13th. We're just doing one event this year, one, big event, and then we are planning to do anywhere from 3 to 6 cities next year.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, it's been a
Fantastic.
big undertaking and it's been, on top of teaching choreography this year has been something really great, as like a new adventure. And yeah, I'm really excited. The response so far has been pretty incredible, and I'm super excited for like what the future holds with Prodigy.
Oh, I love it. Well, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to our incredible guest today, Derek Piquette. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, and I'm sure our listeners loved hearing your insights into the world of dance and acrobatics as much as I did. Thank you so much, Derek.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy we like finally got to do this, and yeah, thank you so much.
As always, dear listeners, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the amazing acrobatic world around you. Thanks for listening, everyone, and have a great day.